Welcome back to the Women in Movement podcast. My name is Teresa Mangan. I am a movement practitioner and facilitator in New York City. I am here with Lindsay Krasna today. She is a dear friend, the owner of LK Nutrition in Park Slope, Brooklyn. She also sees individuals online virtually. Lindsay, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, thank you so much for having me, T. I am, like she said, a registered dietitian in Brooklyn. My practice specializes in eating disorders, disordered eating, and I'm also a former washed-up college basketball player, which is how T and I met on the basketball court. And yeah, she's been inspiring me with movements ever since I've known her. So happy to be here and talking to you.
Yes, thank you so much. We've had so many conversations throughout the years. What is cool about our relationship is that we just met on the basketball court, not knowing what each other did, and it just organically formed this friendship, which is, I think, what's so beautiful about sports and movement and fitness, and the ability to have this nonverbal conversation before having this pressured verbal conversation. It just allows for the relationships to be deeper and like cooler and more connected. We also are so lucky to have this women's basketball pickup in Park Slope. We play outside and inside, just pick up basketball, a bunch of olds, like you said, washed up or non-washed up college basketball players, which is just a fun time every week to get together.
Yes.
Yeah.
Shout out to those ballers.
Yeah. So Lindsay, can you tell us a little bit about your background, like young Lindsay growing up, you know?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, growing up, I was a pretty active kid involved in a lot of different sports, soccer, basketball, volleyball, and I kind of started getting interested in nutrition more from the standpoint of sports nutrition.
Mm-hmm.
You know, especially as I started to hone in more on competitive basketball and started looking to, you know, play at the next level in college. And I think nutrition was, you know, an area of interest to me from the standpoint of like, how could I, just kind of get that competitive edge. And I think I knew I was wanting to focus on nutrition in general going into college, and I was fortunate to go to a school that had a specific nutrition program, which at the time wasn't super common. And I would say through a combination of some different experiences, I started becoming more interested in not just like what we eat in terms of like the, you know, biochemical aspects of nutrition, but also like the how we eat and how we think about food and like our relationships to food in a more like psychological and social way. And I think that, you know, it was a combination of, different experiences I was going through, also just like observing. I remember like during my dietetic internship, observing some of the dietitians that I was training with, and, you know, finding like just watching the sort of disconnect between what was being suggested to clients or patients and the clients and patients sort of receptivity. And I remember thinking to myself during that time, like, God, I really want to be able to work with people to like meet them where they're at, to really hear their story, to really understand like their specific ways of relating to food and their histories, because I think all that's so important if you're, you know, if we're going to make any recommendations. And so, you know, I found myself more drawn to like the counseling process, the psychological aspects of food.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where I went further out in my career after that.
Yeah, I mean, it's all played into each other, and then what your gut health is like affects your brain health and your totally. It's all interrelated. I think too, it's oftentimes that we even just the practice of eating have changed how we do it. We don't always eat in community anymore, which is a big thing. That used to be a way that people would gather, a way that people would, really bond by eating the same food and commenting on the food. Something that I realized the other day was we were in a dance class, and I've realized this before, but whenever there's a texture that has to do with food, or like savory, like when there's like a specific texture, some people are really good at stating those specific textures and the spices and like really calling out what is in the food. And for me, most of my nutrition has been, I think, more so just like, do I have enough protein in my stomach? Like, do I feel fueled enough to do a workout or after a workout,
Yeah.
Yes, certain foods taste good, but I don't think I have the same palate, like, spectrum that other people have. Awareness that other people have. Like, my taste buds don't have that much, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Like differentiability.
Yeah. Discernment.
Discernment. Yeah. Which was like an interesting reflection. I'm like, okay, maybe that's something I can work on. But also, again, with community, that comes too, of that conversation on what is,
totally
going through your mouth.
Yes. And I think that's probably another good example of how, like, I guess there's always that nature versus nurture debate, but like depending upon maybe also your past experiences can impact like what you're attuned to as you're eating. And so for you, like, as an athlete as well, a lot of times the way we think about and talk about nutrition is more like fuel focused and how is this going to impact my activity versus, maybe a appreciation for the pleasure or the savory, or not savory, but the kind of palate experience, like a foodie might focus on. So it's interesting to think about like how we each have different experiences in that way, and one's not necessarily right or wrong, but it's different.
I think it is cool to have the palette, though, the wider palette, because it's just an appreciation on a deeper level to me. I think that ability to sense in that way is really beautiful. I was noticing too the other day, I was like, oh, when I smell things, I usually just like notice things that really smell bad. I don't always like appreciate the good smells of things. And same thing with food, because like when you're cooking, like it smells so good, you should just really enjoy that smell, but oftentimes it's just like, oh, the Gowanus Canal, like I walked past the wrong tree that all the dogs peed on, but it's like, again, going back to like enjoying the world with all of your senses, and smell and taste are huge when it comes to nutrition.
Totally. And it's so interesting, is that you're making me think about like when you're saying eating in community and how that can also help you maybe be more aware of certain sensory aspects of food that you might not otherwise be paying attention to if someone else is like commenting. And I think it can go in the other way too, or not the other way, but it makes me think also just about how, people who are maybe commenting like negatively about food or, engaging in like diet talk can also kind of like yuck your yum in a way, or just take away from your experience in a positive way eating. So it's interesting how it can kind of go both ways.
Yuck your yum. So we're heavily influenced by all those around us and the choices that we make because of this like mimetic desire that we have.
Ooh, mimetic. What's that?
We like want what other people want.
Huh. Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go a little bit into nutrition for athletes. Is that okay?
Sure.
Cool. So nutrition for athletes, what are some things that you think like the listeners kind of don't know about, or some things that that you've done with your research to kind of, or your lived experience to work within your athletic realm?
My first thought is Sour Patch Kids.
Yeah. No, I was about to say that. If you didn't bring it up, it was going to be a question.
I actually wrote it down in my notes.
Okay.
Put an asterisk. But jokes aside, I think, first of all, I think the thing I always say to clients, or, anyone who's asking for advice, or in this area is, I'm a trained expert in nutrition, but you're the expert of your own body. Mm-hmm. So, and everyone's different. And so anything that I suggest is merely a suggestion, but I always implore people to, prioritize what their experience is in their body first and foremost over any nutrition advice, whether that's for me or anyone else. So, so I think when it comes to like nutrition for athletes, everyone is different. And I know we were even just talking off the mic before about how, like, how you think about maybe fueling your body before a particular workout. Like you might have certain things that work for you or work for you during particular types of workouts. That might not work for other people, and that might work really well for some people. So I think some of it is experimental and just kind of, feeling through, your own experience. But but as far as like, things that like kind of basic nutrition principles for athletics or workouts, I think there's like specifics around the actual workout, like the timing and the kind of content of what we're eating before or after, or even sometimes during, depending upon the type of workout. But then there's also like one's general nutrition over, time. So I guess what I mean by that is, you can sort of be super attuned to your meal timing and the kind of macro composition before and after your workout. But if you're not eating kind of adequately and balanced on a, generally consistent basis well before and well after your workouts, then that's not really going to do much. Like,
right.
You have to kind of also have a, good foundation.
I like that you said that it is actually more about the baseline nutrition, because that is, yes, it is a baseline.
Yeah.
Throughout. Yeah.
Nourishment and movement. But for something like, basketball or like a workout class. So yeah, having like maybe 30 to 60 minutes prior to the event, some kind of like simple carbohydrate, because carbohydrates are our main source of immediate energy. And so like some examples could be like a granola bar, pretzels, and going back to Sour Patch Kids, that's my my pre-basketball snack of choice. Sometimes I'll even have them during the halftime or something, because they have like lower fiber content, and so it's not as hard on your stomach. It can kind of like absorb really quickly and give you a quick burst of energy. So yeah, that's like something to think about. And then after a workout, the kind of general recommendation is typically like 50% carb, 50% protein type of snack. So like the classic, one that gets recommended a lot is like chocolate milk. Doesn't have to be chocolate, it could just be regular milk, but yeah, any kind of like milk, or like a protein smoothie with fruit, so you have some carb from the fruit and protein from protein powder or peanut butter or anything like that, eggs and toast.
Yeah, no, thank you so much, that sounds good. I think too, as an athlete, I started eating pineapples whenever I eat like red meat when I can, because I know that the enzymes from pineapples help you to digest the iron in the red meat. Yeah. So those timings are great. Is there like other supplement things that you work into your day that you?
Yeah, the thing with supplements is that in general, I think they can be a good supplement, hence the name, if you're struggling to get nutrients through food, or, struggling with a particular, deficiency. But the one thing about supplements to be careful of is, first of all, they're not regulated by the FDA. And so unlike, you know, prescription medication, supplements don't have that same regulation. And so, you know, there are certain brands that are more reputable than others or have been like third party tested, but in general, the kind of mentality in the dietetics world is try to do food first before supplementation.
Food first.
And also, I think that reminds me of another concept that's like, food and nutrition are synergistic. So like nutrients, like you were saying with the pineapple, you know, or like an acidic fruit with the steak, they work together to help your body absorb the nutrients better, versus if you were just to take, you know, a supplement of iron, you know, sometimes that's helpful and some people do need to take that, but your body is going to be able to absorb it's like more bioavailable, as they say in the field, consuming as many of your nutrients as you can through food. So I wouldn't necessarily, I don't have a general recommendation for supplements because of that. There are certain instances, like if I'm working with a client and we, you know, determine there's a nutrient deficiency or something on someone's labs shows something, sometimes taking a supplement can be really helpful. But but in general, food first is typically the recommendation.
Yeah, I love that. Cool. So do you want to talk about any fad diets you've heard, or like debunking any of the myths that you've heard in your nutrition experience?
Well, there's a lot of myths that exist around nutrition.
Before having this conversation, I saw my roommate and she was like, I was like, do you have any questions for a nutritionist? And she was like, yeah, there's a new fad. And my roommate's a little bit younger than me. So she's like, there's a new fad that she sees on Instagram. But it's a cottage cheese with everything fad. So like everyone is mixing cottage cheese with all their meals. And I think the premise is that it has a lot of protein in it, so it'll make you fuller. And I was like, well, I already make sure that I get protein in my meals because I know if I don't, then I'm more hungry. So I'm just a hungrier person. But yeah, so that's the one that I've heard of recently. I know a couple years ago was like the huge keto boom. But yeah, I'm curious, you probably hear a lot.
Yeah, it's funny. I haven't heard of the cottage cheese one, but maybe I need to get on TikTok and see what's going on there.
Yeah. Get with a younger crowd for a second.
Yeah.
Understand.
No, I do learn a lot from my younger clients for sure. It reminds me, there's a phrase that this dietitian who studied like positive relationships in food with kids, she says, when the joy of eating is lost, nutrition suffers. And I really like that concept. I think it's so true. Like, like for personal experience, my dad like is very used to, he grew up in a family of 7, and my grandma would cook for them like all the time, but it was more of like it was more of this idea of like, you got to eat fast or someone's going to take food off your plate, you know? So it's still to this day, he eats like, so like I have to keep trying to tell him like, slow down, like, you know, enjoy, like it is good, but you're not even allowing yourself to enjoy it. Yeah.
But it stuff stems with you from like your childhood, and then it translates into your adulthood, and whether it gives you digestive issues or, you know, other things down the road, it is a very psychological experience.
Totally.
So I'm happy that you're doing all the studies and work to make that process better for people.
Thanks. I'm trying. Yeah. There's a lot of layers to it, and but yeah, I enjoy to work with. So
yeah. So can you talk to us a little bit about some of the like models you use or plans you kind of use or help people put in place to go about their life and enjoying nutrition?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I can share that there's like some different theories and philosophies that we draw from, but the type of structure or, plan, quote unquote, that we might work with someone on tends to be very collaborative, and that's intentional because everyone is so different. And part of what we really try to do is, again, get out of that sort of prescriptive diet cycle where it's about following, rules and prescriptions. And so from that standpoint, there isn't like a one kind of one road or one route to getting to someone's goals. But some of the theories that I would say like inform our work are there's like a theory or movement philosophy called intuitive eating, which I can share more about if you'd like to know.
Let's hear about it.
Also, and then health at every size is another one. Sometimes people will call it like anti-diet. Intuitive eating. I mean, there's like a lot we could say about that we probably don't have time to get it all into. And it's also evolved like over the years since the original authors of the concept wrote their first book about it. But the idea behind it is that, we are all born with instincts around our appetites, and over time, those instincts can become disrupted for all kinds of reasons. Diet culture being a big one. But there could be all kinds of reasons. And the concept of intuitive eating ultimately is around like reconnecting with those intuitions, with our appetites. That being said, I think a big misconception about the idea, and even in the title of intuitive eating, is that we should solely rely on our intuition for our food decisions. And I think that is an oversimplification, and I think there is actually room and a need for structure and planning to a certain extent, and guidance. And that's kind of what we offer with our clients, is trying to both help them learn the skills to trust their bodies more, be more in touch with their like appetite cues, hunger, fullness, satisfaction, discerning, what we were talking about before, and at the same time, like having a more evidence-based understanding of nutrition as well from a non-diet culture standpoint.
A non-diet culture standpoint. I love that. It also kind of aligns with my idea of fitness, of this idea of, yes, I teach group fitness classes and such, but there's also this idea of allowing people to have this autonomy over their own body and their own choices, which is, again, going to help in the long term. Yeah, they'll still come to class for fun and experience new things, but they also have this inspiration to do things on their own and do the work on their own, because the sessions with you are going to last a certain amount, but the rest of their week they have to do the work on their own. They have to do the all of the choice making, the hard work.
Exactly. I think that's a perfect bridge between us, because like the way I think about our work is like, we don't want to replicate the diet mentality by just giving people these arbitrary rules and then they're just now relying on these external rules, as opposed to integrating their own ability to make decisions about what makes the most sense for them in a given moment about food. And I think it's like similar in the sense that like your classes can be a container for giving people the chance to explore their bodies, or feel have invitations to connect with their bodies in different ways. But then the hope is that they're taking that outside of the classes or outside of our sessions and applying that and practicing,
like having them also reflect on their experience. So that's something that I've implemented too before and after the classes, is making sure that people reflect on the experience that they had, and by adding in a question, So that sticks with them for longer. You know, this experience is just like 1 hour of your time, but how is it going to play into the rest of the day, the rest of the week? And that's the same with your sessions, right? So it's yes, we're giving you this information, but how can we keep it going? Yeah. So do you have any of these like little quick reminders or little phrases that you've heard or use with clients that are helpful for people to remember?
There's an acronym that I've heard a fellow registered dietitian use to kind of help think about nutrition priorities, and the acronym is RAVES, RAVES, and it stands for regularity, adequacy, variety, eating socially, and spontaneity.
I like that.
Yeah.
Can you break down each word for us real quickly?
Sure.
Yeah.
So regularity meaning, eating regularly throughout the day, typically going for like long periods of time without eating isn't ideal. Of course, sometimes we're in situations where we just can't, but our bodies tend to, work best. We feel best when we're eating, every few hours or so. Again, different for everyone in terms of the exact amount. Adequacy meaning having enough food, so enough nutrition, and that means like calorically, energetically having enough intake. Variety meaning enough different types of foods and nutrients. So of course there's nothing wrong with routine, and sometimes it can be helpful to have repetition as well in our eating, just to kind of for the ease of it. But getting different types of foods, different food groups is also really helpful nutritionally and important. Eating socially, we were talking about that earlier. Benefits to being connected with others while we're eating, and again, not everyone's circumstances allow for that on a regular basis, but finding ways to enjoy food with others, I think is part of our overall well-being.
It gives story time too, because it's like
yeah, totally. So much conversation can come from that. And then spontaneity, as in not being so rigid that you're only eating what you've planned, but also there can be a lot of joy and nutritional benefit even to being open to maybe last minute eating plans, going out to ice cream with your friend, or
like if you're going on a hike, actually foraging.
Right?
Kind of cool. Yeah. Not in New York City. It's the pollution here is pretty high, but outside of the city. I love the ad of spontaneity, because that's actually one of the words used in this book called Playful Intelligence. And there's 5 different sections as well. And spontaneity is one of the sections. And I think, again, it gets us this idea of like trying new things, doing new things, being open to the moment, being present in the moment, and being able to adapt and going with the moment as opposed to always planning or reflecting like you're really there. Or if like your grandma made you something out of love, like just eating it because you're like, she made it out of love, and
yes, this is what needs to happen right now for me to maintain a good relationship with my grandma. Exactly. Yes, I love that. So can you repeat the acronym one more time real quick? Yeah, sure. It's RAVES, RAVES. And just to give the person credit that came up with it, I believe his name is Shane Jeffrey, is the dietitian that I believe created that.
Cool.
Concept, so.
Thank you so much for sharing. That's really helpful and fun. So a couple more questions if you have time. Okay. So I did remember the restriction questions I had for you. So one of them was, I have heard of, because you were talking about carbohydrates, I have heard of individuals who have gone even on, they're not vegetarians, but they're fruitarians. And because of the oxygen level in the blood, and they do breath training with blood, like it's an intense training. And I was wondering if you've heard of that or come across that, or...
I've heard of it. I can confidently say I do not recommend that for anyone. Yeah, it's professionally speaking, I would say pretty dangerous to limit oneself, very dangerous to limit oneself to only fruit. There would just be tremendous nutritional gaps. It doesn't sound ideal. So that's my very...
I was like, wow, this is something I never heard about before. This is a couple years I heard about it, and I was like, what?
Yes, and that's actually, I think, segue into the idea of like, if a nutrition recommendation or a diet that you're following is causing you stress, then that may not actually be as beneficial, even if someone's telling you, only eating fruit is going to improve the oxygen levels in your blood and enhance your performance. I don't think that's...
it's the NO levels, I think, but nitrate, it's all of that, and the oxygen dependency is lower, and it's very interesting. I'm like, oh, okay, so
But also, I think even how we define health is, so that could be just a whole other conversation, but even if, let's say, in theory, only eating fruit is gonna be beneficial to someone in some way, which I don't think it is. But let's say just theoretically, that also, I'm just thinking like how you'd have to live your life. Like you couldn't socialize with people, and eat like normal meals. The restrictive nature of that would have so many other kind of negative impacts on one's quality of life.
Also, I would encourage any of the listeners to make sure they check out your practice and your whether or just some guidance or any questions on what they want to take with their next routes if they're curious on nutrition too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just a couple further questions. If you were able to, what is like one question that you wish people asked you more often?
Ooh.
Yeah.
What a good question.
Yeah.
Question about a question.
Mm-hmm.
This is, wait, let me give this a second to think about. The first thing that comes to mind is for clients, instead of asking, what do you think about insert XYZ, nutrition concept, reframing that to, can we think through this together? Or can you help me think through this? And the reason I say that is because I think the first creates a dynamic where I'm being considered as like the expert.
Yeah.
And
you have all the answers.
Exactly. Yeah. Which I definitely don't. And also the second kind of framing of the question sets us up for having a more collaborative conversation and values the person's own experience in maybe getting to the ultimate answer or solution that we're going for. It's just more collaborative.
Yeah, it's this idea of we. Like,
yes.
We are working on this together.
Yes.
As opposed to, I'm coming to you for these services.
Yes.
Like, I'm waiting for you to provide for me.
Yes.
As opposed
Tell
to,
me what
like,
to do.
yeah, opposed to it being like, I recognize that I have to do the work, you have to do the work, and we can start talking about how we dynamically work together on this process.
Yes.
And since a lot of what you do is a lot of psychological eating, addressing those things as well. It's super important because everyone has different things that activate them in different ways. My friend started using the word activation instead of triggering, and I like that. I think that people are activated in different ways, and for you to start to understand them as a whole, and them start to understand you as a whole, and that's going to make the process much easier.
Yes.
Because it's a teamwork.
Yeah,
back to our basketball days.
Teamwork.
Yeah, I love that. Another quick question for you is, what is something that you're researching right now that you're currently interested in?
Ooh,
and it doesn't have to be about nutrition. It can be about anything.
Just in general.
Yeah. Or
well,
a good book.
I am actually reading a really interesting book that's combines elements of professional and personal interests. It's called Queering Nutrition and Dietetics, and it's about it's like a collection of kind of like essays / short. I don't even want to say stories, but just just different queer people writing in about their different experiences around nutrition, their bodies. There's like professionals as well, clinicians who have, contribute different thoughts. But I think for a lot of people in the LGBTQ community, there's a lot of additional layers that come with eating and food and bodies that don't get talked about enough. And the book is helping me expand my view of experiences of people in the LGBTQ community around food and their bodies. Gender and food. And I was just talking with someone about this specific topic in general, because we were talking about just like LGBTQ affirming nutrition care, and like how like this connection between like struggling to trust one's intuition maybe around sexuality or desire, and or how we express ourselves gender identity wise, and like the messaging that we get around that as a society, and how there's sort of maybe similarities in terms of like diet culture, like don't trust your body, don't trust your appetite. There's that's interesting. I mean, everything crosses over at some moment, but that is definitely different to think about. What's the book called? Or it's called Queering Nutrition and Dietetics.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Nice. And you were just also recognized in it was a magazine?
Everywhere. It's like a queer media company that does, I think their focus is like more travel based, but they do like pieces on different queer owned businesses. So that was the interview I was referencing before.
Yeah, I hope that there is more research coming out with the queer population and women's bodies. Oh, and there's also one other thing I actually forgot to ask you, but I know that genetics sometimes plays a role into like it plays a role into nutrition, what your body can absorb, what your body's used to. I know individuals who are sometimes adopted from a different country have had not a great experience eating food of a culture that is not the same culture that they, were born into. So is there any experience or like things you can talk to about the diversity in food or cultures, or importance of making sure that we still celebrate the cultures that we come from, or our history is?
I think food and culture is so important, and one of the big criticisms that I have with our field, the field of dietetics, is that I think it really unfairly demonizes foods from cultures that aren't Eurocentric and white. And a lot of the standardized nutrition recommendations are, really focused on like the Mediterranean diet, for example, and just omit, all these different ways, all these different cultures that are
flavorful.
Flavorful and nutritious. And
Yeah.
there's not like one right way to get our nutrients. There's so many different ways through all different kinds of cultures. And and I think it's problematic and harmful, because then it shames people who, are eating in ways that may not be aligned with how like mainstream, nutrition science says is quote unquote the right way. And it's not even accurate, I would argue. But culture is so important. And I think it's also a way that people, feed their identity, feel socially connected. And so if we're taking that away, or discouraging people from that connection, then that's also like harmful. Yeah,
I think that there's a lot. And I mean, if you attack someone's identity, it's very hard to have a relationship with them at all.
Mm-hmm.
That's just from the get. That's just like the basis of relationships. But when you're also talking about food and this culture of like cooking and passing on recipes, this idea of also sharing the story of the food, giving it a meaning as well as not just the food that is the carbohydrates or whatever. Like it has a meaning. Yeah, I think that it's super hard to bring people to a level of understanding when you can't just enjoy the food for
what it is.
Yeah, and then the richness.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, we all need to break a little more bread together.
Yeah. Cheers to that.
Awesome. Okay, cool. So we have gone for a pretty long time right now. Is there anything else that you would like to kind of, any kind of plugs you want to give the listeners right now? How to reach you? I'll put that all in the bio as well.
Yeah, sure. And people can reach out to me through my website or email. My website's www.lknutrition.com. My Instagram account, or our practice Instagram, is at lknutrition_NYC. And our office is based in Park Slope, Brooklyn, our physical location. And then we also see people virtually all over the U.S.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you did say if you do have like a connection with other dietitians, so if it doesn't work out with your practice, you have some referrals ready to go for people.
Yes.
So definitely reach out to Lindsay and inquire if this is interesting to you or someone that you love or care about. And Lindsay, just one last question for the audience. If you were to say one thing to the audience, and this could be anyone listening, they might be in pole movement, they might be in athletic sports movement, they might be in the queer community, or any individual listening right now, do you have any piece of advice or thing for them to take away in this moment?
If you're struggling in some way, there's help out there, and struggling around your relationship with food or your body, there's help out there.
I mean, there's help, and people need to know that.
And
that's super important.
And nutrition is really complicated, or it doesn't have to be complicated, but there's so much misinformation out there. There's we live in the age of unregulated like influencers, and everyone has their different belief systems and things that they're promoting, and we all have histories and cultures and identities and traumas that can impact our relationships with food, medical conditions. So it makes sense that a lot of people find it to be a complicated area, and hopefully we can help provide some clarity, and hopefully we did today in this convo.
Thank you so much. Thank you. And listeners, thank you for listening. We hope you get a nice snack today, some spontaneity in your day. Thank you and have a great day. Bye.